Hey, good morning, everyone. To call this meeting back into order. It's the 23rd. It's 8:30 in the morning. We have 7 board members present. And before we dive into the proposals, I'm going to give Vice Chair Hoffman the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If we can start off, I'd like to reconsider proposal number 2 as amended, or do we have to go back to proposal 2 in its original form?
Ask me again.
I'm going to reconsider proposal number 2, but I don't know if, I think we have to go back to the original.
As passed.
No. So, through the chair, Member Hoffman, you guys passed an amendment, so you'd have to go back to it as amended. Okay?
Mr. Chair, I move to reconsider proposal number 2 as amended.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Vice Chair Hoffman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I was one of the people who voted against this yesterday, and after reviewing my notes and really what really put me over the edge is when I was thinking about, it's already currently allowed in the general hunts, but the biggest factor that prompted me to reconsider this proposal is that the medical exemption part, right now it's allowable if you get the doctor's note. And that may not be easy for all people to get in Alaska, especially in rural Alaska. That might be somewhat of an hindrance. And so with that, that's my main reason, Mr. Chairman.
So just to be clear, we have an amended proposal in front of us. That amendment was to exclude PRISM, I think PRISM site, so we just have the verifiers and clarifiers connected to that. Is that correct?
So, to the chair for clarification, the amendment was to allow the use of verifiers, clarifiers, and non-electronic scopes excluding PRISM scopes.
Okay.
So you still had all other versions of non-electronic scopes on there. It wasn't just verifiers and clarifiers.
Thanks for that. Discussion on this from the board. Anyone? Member Garner?
Yeah, just for the record, still in support of it. I think it's a visual impairment aid. It is not a advantage. It is simply nothing other than adding reader glasses, adding clarity to an existing system. So I'd be in support of it.
Member Loring?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to make an amendment to the proposals back on the table. And I'd like to amend it to read just the, and I need to know from Natalie exactly which one's which, but the one that sits in the PEEP that only illuminates or only clarifies the pins. Is that the verifier or the clarifier?
Through the chair, Member Loring, that's the clarifier.
Okay. And so I'd like to remove everything from this proposal except for the clarifier. And that's what part of the letter that to the governor that was requested by the member of the public. And that illuminates the pins. And then the folks that are talking about having stigmatisms and other visual disabilities, that was mostly what the testimony talked about. So my amendment would be to only have the clarifiers in.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Discussion on that amendment. I guess I have a question to Lieutenant Valentine. I mean, would you have trouble classifying a verifier versus a clarifier whenever you're checking somebody in the field?
Mr. Chair, we would have to educate our wildlife troopers on what those are to do it. I mean, we'd have to do some little quick slideshow presentation or something to tell them the difference. It wouldn't be super challenging, but we definitely it's not something that we would normally check on a bow, so it'd be new for us.
Further discussion on that amendment from the board. Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think both are important because one helps with nearsighting and the other one helps with farsighted. So, you know, you have the clarifier in your PEEP, which will give you your pins a good vision of your pins, and the verifier, if I get it right, will also then make a clear image of what your target is. So they work together, because some people, like myself, have more of the pin issue and not the target issue, but then there's other people that may have both issues, or may just have the issue with having a clear target picture. So I think they're both needed, and the only people that are going to be advantaged to this is people with vision impairments.
Do you know, do they have verifier and clarifiers for like a rifle with iron sights? Does anybody know? Member Bakestal.
I know that they have them for peep sights, and I believe it's like a verifier basically that screws in so you can see your sight better into a peep sight.
Member Brett.
I think also you could include the red dot sight. That helps people with that.
Other board members' discussion on this? Member Loring.
Thank you. Again, to Natalie, is the clarifier and verifier two separate pieces of equipment? Or is it, they both incorporated into the one?
Through the chair, yes, they are two separate pieces of equipment. So just to make sure we're clear, verifier is the one that clears up the sight pins, clarifier is the one that clears up the object. So we're getting eerily close to differences between iron sights and a scope on a rifle, trying to clear up those images.
So we have an amendment in front of us here. Any further discussion on the amendment, just to include, is it verifiers? Was that right, Member Loring?
Just to include the technology that clears up the pins on the site.
The clarifier. Further, Member Garner.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in support of the amendment. If we're providing clear vision, it's clear vision for nearsightedness and farsightedness. It's just not in support of the amendment.
I'm going to echo those remarks from Member Gardner. That's my line of thought as well. Member Loring.
Yeah, thank you. And just one more clarification from staff. Do any of these allow magnification, or are they just clearing up the picture without magnification?
Kendra, do you know?
Through the chair, can you repeat the question? I was over helping Natalie here.
Yeah, do either the clarifiers or the verifiers allow magnification? Or are they just straight one power? Or are we allowing magnification if the proposal goes through with both?
So through the chair to Member Loring, Kendra Holman, OSM for the record. So yes, they can have different powers. But different powers are needed for different people with vision. Your verifiers are going to go in your PEEP sight. They're going to be for people who can't see close up. Your clarifiers are going to go, typically they're going to end up actually can go in your sight housing. Those are going to help people who can see close up but can't see far away. There's also people who, once you put one in, it screws with their vision enough so that they can't necessarily see the other very well and actually need both. I can tell you that my daughter, who shoots archery, is one of those people who ends up needing both. So hopefully that helps, but there are different powers, and the different powers help adjust for people with different vision levels.
Other board members' discussion on this amendment? If not, we might be ready for the question.
Call the question, Mr. Chairman.
Question's been called on the amendment.
On the amendment to Proposal 2, to change it to allow the use of only clarifiers and no other non-electronic scopes. Garner.
No.
Loring.
Yes.
Barrett.
No.
Hoffman.
No.
Fletcher.
No.
Bechtel.
No.
Mueller.
No.
Amendment fails, 1 in favor, 6 against, Mr. Chair.
So we have the original amended proposal in front of us to include both verifiers and clarifiers exclude prisms, but include all other non-electrical sites. So further discussion on this amended proposal. There's no further discussion. Vice Chair Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Like I stated before, I'm going to be supporting this, and it's already legal in general hunt, so this could help. Someone may not remove that equipment, and it's already on there. So if they go to archery-only hunt, that, could help in that situation as well, too.
Member Loring, do you have anything? Nope. If not, we might be ready for the question.
Call the question.
The question has been called.
The board has heard no concerns from the public regarding costs to private persons if this regulation is adopted.
Thank you for that. Will you pull the board, please, Carrie?
Final action on Proposal 2 as amended, and that's, once again, to allow the use of verifiers, clarifiers, and all non-electronic scopes, excluding prism scopes. Fletcher.
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Loring.
No.
Garner.
Yes.
Bechtel.
Yes.
Mueller.
No.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 2 against, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt Proposal 4, close a 2-mile wide corridor along the Ambler Road for hunting and trapping.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Whenever you're ready, Department. And just to remind board members, in this downtime, we've got a new RC. What is that, RC 27?
Can we take a short break, please?
Absolutely. We'll take a short break. Should we stay in our chairs or can we walk
Stay in
around?
your chairs.
Oh, we'll stay in our chairs.
Why did it stop?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ryan Scott, and I'm the Director of the Division of Wildlife Conservation. Joining me this morning is Glenn Stout, the Galena area biologist, and Alita Trainer, the subsistence biologist for this region. The three of us will be presenting on Proposal 4. Proposal 4 is a proposal to close a 2-mile wide corridor along the Ambler Road to hunting and trapping and game management units 23 and 24. This proposal was submitted by the Department of Fish and Game, and our recommendation is to support it. Proposed regulatory language. This slide shows the proposed language. Hunting and trapping would be closed in units 23 and 24 within 1 mile from each side of the Ambler Road, including the drivable surface. However, hunters and trappers would not be prohibited from crossing the corridor to access open areas for hunting and trapping. The proposed access road shown here is alternative A for the Ambler Mining District. It's a proposed 211-mile-long road that will originate from the Dalton Highway in Unit 24A and will run west through Unit 24 and terminate in the Ambler Mining District in Unit 23. The proposed road is for commercial purposes only, is private, and access to it will be controlled by a locked gate that's staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The first 5 miles of the road will originate from the Dalton Highway and cross the Dalton Highway Corridor Management Area to the west in Unit 24A. The Dalton Highway Corridor Management Area is a 10-mile wide corridor extending 5 miles either side of the road. The management corridor is closed to hunting. However, big game, small game, and fur animals may be taken in the area by bow and arrow only, and small game may be taken by falconry. The Ambler Road would cross lands owned by the State of Alaska, National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, and several private entities. The closest communities to the proposed road include Bettles, Evansville in Unit 24B, and Kodiak, Shungnak, and Ambler in Units 23. I should point out, too, that I believe in front of you received RC 27 this morning, and that is, RC 27, and it describes the alternative route that has been selected. That is the route that is being displayed for you in this presentation. The proposed route would also cross numerous RS 2477 trails, navigable waters, as well as cross or parallel historic trap lines. The next series of slides are going to review the population status of big game, small game, and fur bearers in Units 24A, 24B, and Eastern Unit 23, as well as hunter and harvest information. But before I get to that, just to give you some context and some of the data that you'll see, we approach this from a high level. Think about it at the 10 or 20,000 foot level, rather than many other proposals that the board is used to addressing, where we have very detailed information. We simply looked at the data that we had, both on hunter harvest, hunter effort, survey and inventory information, and it's provided to you at a pretty coarse level, but hopefully it'll be beneficial to you. This map depicts the average annual ranges of the caribou herds in northern Alaska. The Ambler Road will cross a portion of the current historic range of the western Arctic herd in portions of 24B and Unit 23, depicted by the yellow polygon on the map. Other caribou herds, either to the north, south, or east, include the Teshpuk Central Arctic herds, porcupine herds, Podzana Hills, Ray Mountains, and the Wolf Mountain caribou herds. The most current photocensus of the western Arctic herd occurred in 2025, an estimated population at 121,000 caribou. This herd has been in decline since 2003, when it peaked at 490,000 animals. Historically, the eastern portion of Unit 23 and portions of Unit 24 have been important wintering areas for the western Arctic herd. Estimates of harvest for western Arctic caribou primarily occur through household surveys and household surveys and in total historically average 12,000 caribou harvested annually. Those surveys indicate that approximately 675 caribou are harvested annually by the residents of Ambler, Kodiak, Shungnak, near the terminus of the Ambler Road, and the Ambler Mining District in Unit 23. Additional harvest occurs by residents of Selawik, Kiana, Norvik, Kotzebue, and Huslia from hunters that travel from those communities to harvest western Arctic caribou in eastern Unit 23. Annual harvest can be highly variable for any given year based on movements and timing of the caribou relative to the communities. As mentioned earlier, numerous other herds occur to the north, south, and east of the proposed Ambler Road, including the Teshpuk, Central Arctic, Porcupine, Hodzana Hills, Ray Mountains, and Wolf Mountain caribou herds. Based on the historic ranges for these herds, the department expects minimal or no interaction of these caribou herds with the Ambler Road. Other caribou harvest occurs in Unit 24A and 24B from numerous herds, but occurs at a much lower levels compared to the Western Arctic herd. Over the past 5 years, an average of 72 caribou hunters harvested 26 caribou annually, and 82% of the harvest occurs by residents. Most of this harvest is from the Central Arctic or porcupine caribou herds during the winter, although a few Hodzana Hills caribou are harvested in some years. Unit 24B has a low harvest and averages 4 caribou harvested per year by 12 hunters, half of which are by residents. We're going to switch to moose now. Moose populations and composition surveys are regularly conducted in western Unit 24A, most of Unit 24B, and eastern Unit 23. The combined aggregate of those survey areas are depicted on the map by the gray shading. The Unit 24A population estimate for moose is 790 animals, which represents a density of about 0.2 moose per square mile. The population estimate for Unit 24B is 3,200 moose, representing a density of 0.24 moose per square mile. And the average population estimate over the past 2 surveys for the upper Kodiak drainage in Unit 23 is 664 moose, representing a density of 0.13 moose per square mile. All 3 populations are characteristic of low-density populations that exist at the extent of their northern range for interior Alaska. The last 5-year harvest of moose in Unit 24A averages 37 animals annually by 137 hunters. Residents account for 61% of the harvest. 90 hunters harvested 39 moose annually in Unit 24B, and residents account for 74% of the harvest. In the upper Kodiak portion of Unit 23, 40 hunters harvest 14 moose annually, and 100% of the harvest is by residents. Moving on to Dall sheep. Potential sheep habitat is generally classified as mountainous terrain above 3,000 feet of elevation, as depicted in the dark green shading on this map. The proposed road does not appear to traverse any sheep habitat, but comes into close proximity to the most southern portion of potential sheep habitat in the Brooks Range. The department regularly conducts sheep surveys in a portion of Unit 24A to estimate composition. However, the survey area in northern Unit 24A and north and east of the proposed road. No sheep surveys have occurred in Unit 24B, and sheep surveys in the Schwatka Mountains in Unit 23 have been suspended. Therefore, the department does not have composition or abundance data for sheep habitat immediately north of the proposed Ambler Road. In Unit 24A, over the past 5 years, 37 hunters harvested 7 sheep annually, and residents comprise 39% of the harvest. In Unit 24B, 7 hunters harvested 1 sheep annually. The lone harvested sheep was taken by a non-resident. Sheep hunting under state regulation in Unit 23 has been closed since 2014. Moving on to bears now. Population size for black and brown bears are unknown, as the department does not conduct any surveys in Units 24A, 24B, or Eastern Unit 23. However, both species occur throughout the units, including along the proposed Ambler Road route. Black bear harvest is unknown, as harvest reporting or sealing is not required. Brown bear harvest is tracked through the registration permits, subsistence permits, and sealing requirements. Over the past 5 years, on average, 9 brown bears are harvested in Unit 24A annually, and residents accounted for 44% of the harvest. For Unit 24B, 4 brown bears are harvested annually, and residents accounted for 25% of the harvest. For the portion of Unit 23 in the Upper Kodiak, 2 brown bears are harvested annually, and residents accounted for 75% of the harvest. Moving on to muskox. Muskoxen are formally surveyed in Unit 24A, 24B, or the Upper Kodiak portion of Unit 23, but have, on a few occasions, incidentally been observed while conducting surveys for other species. An established population is not known to be present within the proposed Ambler access corridor. However, muskox in Unit 23 are geographically expanding, so muskox could establish themselves along the proposed route in the near future. There are no established muskox hunts near the proposed Ambler Road route. Moving on to fur bearers. Fur bearers exist throughout all of Unit 24A, 24B, and 23, and include wolves, wolverine, marten, lynx, fox, coyote, mink, weasel, beaver, river otter, and muskrat. With the exception of wolves, no fur bearer surveys are conducted to determine population size and trend, and abundance likely naturally fluctuates with historic levels. The most recent wolf survey in Unit 24B resulted in an estimate of 14.5 wolves per 1,000 square miles. Harvests of fur bearers are unknown for most species, as reporting is not required, nor is sealing. However, for those species that are required to be sealed, annual harvests over the past 5 years across Units 24A, 24B, and the Upper Kodiak in Unit 23 combined was 43 animals, 43 wolves, 30 wolverines, 30 lynx, and 9 river otters. Although marten are not required to be sealed, this species is known to be important and targeted by residents of both Units 24 and 23. Small game and waterfowl. Small game, including spruce grouse, rough grouse, sharp-tailed grouse, ptarmigan, and snowshoe hares occur in Units 24A, 24B, and 23 year-round, including in the proposed road route. Abundance is unknown for all species, but likely just naturally fluctuates within historic levels. Waterfowl are present in Units 24A, 24B, and 23 during the breeding season through fall, from roughly late April through early October, while being largely devoid during the remaining months of the year. Harvest levels for small game and waterfowl are limited, but the Division of Subsistence has some information from their Community Subsistence Information System that they will discuss in upcoming slides.
For the record, my name is Alita Trainer, and I am the Northern Region Program Manager for the Division of Subsistence. The next series of slides present spatial and harvest data gathered by the Division of Subsistence over time. Alternative A for the Ambler Road is represented here by the red dotted line, and the proposed corridor is shown in yellow. Because Proposal 4 addresses the proposed corridor, the data we present here is narrowed to that scope and depicts subsistence use areas in an aggregate form relative to the proposed road corridor. However, species-level use area maps are available upon request. Therefore, the green polygon shown on this map represents household search and harvest area for all game resources that occurred in proximity to the proposed Ambler Road 2-mile corridor between 1981 and 2025. These species include small land mammals, large land mammals, and birds, as well as eggs. Use areas for fish and vegetation are not included on this map. The Division of Subsistence maintains a significant statewide spatial data set for subsistence use areas. The text box on this map notes that the data presented here is relative to the proposed road corridor rather than specific to individual communities. This means that not all search and harvest data is depicted here. To achieve a focused data set, we chose to only include use areas that are part of an aggregated data set and overlay or are near the proposed road. This means, for example, if a subsistence user searched for caribou in the southeast corner of this map and also traveled north to the proposed road corridor, their use area were included in both locations. Alternatively, if a subsistence user only searched for caribou in the southeast corner and did not go near the road, their documented use area has not been included. This caveat is important when looking at the data on this slide. Next slide, please. The table on this slide provides the estimated community harvest from 8 communities in proximity to the proposed Ambler Road corridor and relies on the division's most recent comprehensive subsistence household surveys conducted in 2011, 2012, and 2024. Harvest estimates for each large land mammal species are depicted here, while small land mammals such as mink, marten, and beaver, for example, are aggregated. Similarly, birds and egg harvest are combined. This data is available online through our Community Subsistence Information System, or the CSIS. Next slide. This slide provides broader insight into the reliance on wild foods and the relative harvest levels between each community through per capita harvest comparisons. We use per capita estimates because they are a useful metric to accurately compare harvest across communities with different populations. The table on the top half of this slide shows the number of species used and harvested by each community and the total per capita harvest of wild resources. For example, Allakaket harvested 53 different wild resources while using 72 in 2011. The difference between number of species harvested and those used within a community often can reflect the role of sharing or receiving resources that may not be available locally from other areas of the state. The harvesting and using of a diversity of species is reflective of the customary and traditional uses of the area. The figure below depicts the per capita data highlighted in green in the table above. It shows the relative harvest levels across the 8 communities that are in proximity to the proposed road. The per capita harvest for each community provides an opportunity for comparison of harvest levels across communities. Variations in harvest across communities reflect shifts in response to community and environmental conditions, such as resource availability, differences in harvesting patterns, and harvest effort levels, to name a few.
The Ambler Road has not been constructed, and this proposal is largely part of a planning process for future construction and use of the road. The department has no biological concerns for any species that currently uses the road or road corridor. The greatest potential for impact to wildlife is the western Arctic caribou herd that currently and historically use this area during the winter, particularly when the herd was at larger numbers. However, mitigation to minimize the impact to caribou movement, either through the construction phase or subsequent use of the road, may be accomplished by minimizing traffic and associated noise during certain seasons and locations when caribou may be either present or migrating. The closure is estimated to be 211 miles in length and encompass 420 square miles. Although the closure does not prohibit crossing the corridor to access areas that are open to hunting and trapping, existing trap lines are known to cross or parallel the proposed route within the 2-mile corridor. In addition, it is possible that there are existing hunting areas or camps that are currently within the proposed corridor that would be impacted. Additional regulatory needs will be addressed through the regularly scheduled board cycles and other avenues if warranted. Issues such as access to mining claims and hunting and trapping on spur roads within the corridor, intersection of navigable waters and the corridor, and permitted activities on the waterways, and enforcement of fish and wildlife regulations within the corridor. These issues are largely outside the purview of the department, but are being illuminated because such questions from the public have been posed. In addition, to meet the board's statutory responsibility to the subsistence law, it should consider whether regulations continue to provide for reasonable opportunity for subsistence uses if the proposal is adopted. Proposal 4 would create a 2-mile wide corridor along the proposed Ambler Road that would be closed to hunting and fishing, or hunting and trapping and game management units 23 and 24. This proposal was submitted by and supported by the department. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for that presentation. Commissioner.
Yeah, I'd like to provide just a few comments here before you get into deliberations. This meeting was called by me under the authority of AS 1605-310. It's a special meeting. It's not an emergency meeting, as some testifiers have said. It was legally called and approved as such by the Department of Law. I heard testimony at this meeting was called for political reasons. That's blatantly untrue. The Constitution calls for the Commissioner to manage our natural resources for sustainability in the best interests of Alaska. Although critically important, hunting and trapping may not always be in the best interests of Alaskans or the highest and best use of the resource. That means hunting can be closed or restricted at times. For example, we close hunting in wildlife viewing areas as the best use in those areas is wildlife viewing where we have no biological concern with the resource. We close or restrict hunting near parking areas in municipalities due to public safety concerns where we have no biological concerns. We close trapping in areas along highly used trails in the best interest of the public where we have no biological concerns for the resource. Bottom line, we can and do close and restrict hunting in the best interest of the public without biological nexus. This proposal would establish a hunting and trapping closure along a proposed road to a mining district that the governor has decided is in the public's best interest. It is supported by the president in his last executive order. It was asked for by residents of the area and landowners along the route. I signed an MOU with Ada, Nana, Doyon to keep the planning process moving forward. The MOU is legally reviewed and approved by the Department of Law. I called this meeting to engage you in the discussion as the proposal comment deadline for next year's meeting had closed. Alternatively, I could have requested an ACR, but that would have delayed the discussion and delayed the decision. I could have also engaged the legislature, as was done with the Dalton Highway Hall Road, and had legislation passed to establish a corridor. I chose instead to call this meeting to engage you in the discussion. Approval of this proposal would allow the discussion on the Ambler Road to continue. We have a meeting this Friday with the governor's office and the White House to discuss the progress we're making. It does not close any lands today. It only closes hunting and fishing in a buffer if and when a road is built, and it can later be adjusted as necessary, as Director Ryan said. The department submitted this proposal and supports it as written. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And then I had a board member ask a question. Is there a representative from Ada available if we do have any questions? Oh, we got a hand raised back there. Okay. Questions from board members? I guess I could start off with one on, I think, slide 17 when you're talking about small game, and then also maybe on some of the community harvest reports. I noticed that we didn't talk about jackrabbits. We didn't talk about Alaska hares. Are they present in this on the landscape here?
I'd also like to mention, Mr. Chairman, Glenn is the area biologist for most of these. He's here for those types of questions. Also online, we have area biologist Chrissy Osborne from Kotzebue and Alex Hansen, the Western Arctic herd biologist from Kotzebue.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, we have snowshoe hares through 24A, 24B. I don't know about Arctic hares out there in Unit 23.
Okay. Thanks for that. Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you were going over the recorded harvest of big game, did that also include the federal harvest?
Through the chair, Member Brett, where we can get federal data, I would include that in those harvest statistics.
Thank you.
Other board members? Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you. I'll do another one. I seen in the presentation that having a road closure doesn't present any biological concern. If there was no closure, would there be a biological concern?
Through the chair, Member Barrett, I don't think there would be. It's been well stated here that there are other roads. We have the tools to manage for any biological questions that come up.
Member Loring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just got the RC that shows the route that DNR's shows, and it doesn't show any spur roads. I'm not sure if you can answer this, or maybe a representative from Ada can answer this. Are there going to be spur roads to different villages, say Evansville, Bettles, or maybe Alacac, Attawatanna, Kodiak, Shungnak, or Ambler? And are those spur roads, if they are built, will they include the same buffer that the main road has?
Through the chair, Member Loring, I can't speak to future spur roads. Perhaps there's another individual or member from Ada that could answer that. But as the department, I can tell you when we proceeded into this proposal, we were asked that question several times. Not knowing how that would all play out, we approached it that there's going to be a corridor on either side of the road. And if those spur roads fall into that corridor, then the restriction will apply. Now, will there be additional restrictions just because there's a spur road? I can't speak to that at this point.
Yeah, Member Loring.
I'm not sure what the process is, but there is an ADA representative here. Maybe that person could be sworn in, answer questions, or however that goes.
Sure, I think it's a state entity. I think you can just come up and sit down and answer some questions. That'd be great if you're available. And whenever you sit down, if you don't mind, state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Joe Kemp. I work at ADA and I'm the program manager for the Ambler Road project.
I think Member Loring had a few questions. If you heard them back there, you can start answering if it's all right.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard the questions about the spur roads and if ADA's planning on building those or what's going to happen with that. And in your mind, would the buffer also apply to those?
At this time, we do not plan on building any spur roads to any communities or mine sites. It's just the Ambler Road District.
Okay, and can I continue with another question?
Absolutely, yeah.
What type of traffic amount are you expecting? I've been to several scoping meetings over the years to different villages, and how many vehicles per day are you expecting to be on this road? And either both mining related, or even if a spur road is built, fuel, groceries, other projects for the villages. What kind of numbers are you looking at?
It's a tough question to answer at this point right now. We're primarily dealing with Ambler Metals, who is developing the Arctic mine site and starting to develop the Bornite mine site. And they've indicated, I think it's about 10 vehicles a day of ore trucks coming in and out of this mine site. That you'd probably have to talk to them and get a more accurate number. I think that's what they were telling me in the previous months. That does not include, I'm sure they're going to have fuel trucks coming in to supply power for the mine. Also, goods and services and things like that that'll come in and out as well. I don't know. The only community that will technically be hooked up to the road when we build the Ambler Road into the mining district will be Kodiak. All the other communities along the route will not have road access or permanent road access. There's been talk of ice road access potentially, and we have not addressed how commercial trucking might be servicing any of those communities at this point.
Thank you. I think that's pretty important to discuss this because, especially with the Western Arctic caribou herd, they're pretty prevalent in the Shungnak, Kodiak, Ambler area at certain times of the year, and right now we have a large concern about that particular population. And I know at some of the scoping meetings that I've attended, those numbers that of vehicle traffic was a lot higher than what you just mentioned, up in the hundreds. And I just look at what's going on with the Manchu mine here and out of the Tok area. Every 10 or 15 minutes, there's an ore truck on the Richardson Highway. And so I'm a little bit, not concerned, but I'd kind of like to know what numbers we're looking at and how that would affect that particular caribou population, especially during the time of year that it's present. And it would be crossing those roads, through Bornite and Dog Creek and all that area where you're going to be at. They're pretty heavy numbers.
Yeah, the majority of the caribou crossings will probably happen on mining roads, not on the Ambler access road. We're kind of splitting hairs here, but I would probably defer to Ambler Metals on what their policy will be for speed and what they're going to do if they encounter caribou on the road. I know, like I'm sure everybody knows on the North Slope, caribou on the road, everybody stops until it passes. I would assume they will have some sort of the same policy, but you'd have to talk to them. I don't know. As for the Ambler Road, the number of vehicles on the road per hour, maybe one or two. most likely. I don't know if if Ambler Metals will batch their trucks and send them all out kind of together, so they're all a mile apart or something like that. So you'll have, 10 in an hour and then nothing for 20 hours or something until they come back. Again, how they plan on sending their ore to the Dalton Highway is something you'd have to talk to them about and how they're going to do that.
Commissioner.
Yeah, we've had some preliminary discussions as part of the Ambler planning team, and much like the Red Dog Road, there's probably going to be some type of control to ensure that caribou are present on the road, that traffic will stop. So it'll be managed very similar to what's happening at Red Dog. And I will note that we have a lot of caribou herds that have roads in them. Nelchina, 40 Mile, and caribou are managed sustainably with those roads present. But on this road, we will make sure that there are passage rights for caribou moving forward.
Member Garner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you showing up and answering a couple of questions. I have a two-part. Would love to hear why the closure is necessary. We have existing private industrial natural resource roads established in Alaska, examples being Pogo, Green Creek, and Red Dog, where there are private industrial resource roads without any closure or buffer. And two-part question, why it's necessary and why the 2 miles?
I think maybe I'd like to defer to the commissioner on this one. If you want me to build the road, I'm happy to do that for you. I'm not a biologist.
So maybe I can try to answer that question. So when the group was put together to talk about, there's access across Doyon land, there's access across Nano land, and we got together and talked about how we could get this road moving for planning purposes. Both Doyon and Nana felt very strongly that some kind of a assurance as to how this road's going to be managed in terms of hunting and trapping within the corridor was needed to move forward. So we agreed to, as a state, sign on to that MOU and consider, bring forward to the board a consideration for this buffer around it. And that gained Nana and Doyon's agreement to continue on with the process and continue on with the discussions moving forward with planning of the road. I know you heard testimony from several people that they wanted the buffer to be wider. The agreed upon buffer that we had in that meeting was 1 mile on either side of the road. It was a hunting and trapping buffer. It was agreed that it would apply to all hunters. The state was very clear that we did not want this just being outside hunters or only non-resident hunters to be able to not hunt in there. They agreed they wanted the closure for everybody. We also were very adamant that despite the closure, that people could still move across that land on existing RS-2477s or using other routes that are being used currently to access federal, state, or other lands outside that buffer. And of course, the management of those other lands are depending upon the land ownership. Doyon and Nana could close their lands to trespass, as that's their right as landowners. Federal government could restrict, lands on their portion. The only federally qualified users, state lands, would remain open to all people, but access would be provided across that buffer zone. So that's kind of the origin of it, and it basically allowed the discussion to continue moving forward with that kind of as a foundation of how that road would be managed moving forward. And it is a private road, I understand that, but as I think most people understand as corporation owners or landowners, it's very hard to enforce trespass, and they just wanted to make sure that we just didn't get a lot of people that were trespassing on this road that were then hunting and fishing because now there's a road out there. So they wanted some assurance that that wouldn't happen.
Member Brett.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that, Mr. Commissioner. With it being gated and guarded, I don't see how the corridor provides any more security or any less people, wanting to use that road system when it's gated and guarded. I mean, we have corporations right next to Pogo and private property owners right next to Pogo, and there was never no discussion when that was made gated and guarded and private.
Yeah, I understand that. I can just tell you that there was a fear that I think it was the same fear that we originally had on the Hall Road, that there would be, hunting and fishing with this increased access. And it's hard to maintain access controls across this 4.5 mile road. And there's a lot of airstrips and communities and different things that people could potentially get onto access on it. So they felt that the best way to deal with this is a buffer on either side of the road rather than trying to maintain access controls all along the length of that road.
Member Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, since we were just reviewing some of the information for the 2 miles or a mile on either side, I wanted to ask on the DNR entry authorization, I reviewed some of the information there, and it talked about the spur roads as well as aircraft use, that the aircraft use would be private runways. And so I wanted to see if that was going to be also part of like the restrictions for any pilots that we have within Alaska, that they would not be able to utilize those runways.
This only applies to hunting and trapping in the corridor. It does not apply to using ATVs and other things in that corridor, from my understanding, so.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's an airstrip within that buffer, they should still be able to land in that buffer. They just wouldn't be able to hunt within that buffer or trap.
Okay, and then, thank you. For the spur roads, how would that be managed if it would be a public road or a private road for spur roads? And is there going to be security set up on those roads?
So my understanding is this buffer that we're talking about here only applies to the main Ambler Road. If there's spur roads being developed, there would be no buffer on those.
Thank you.
Member Loring.
Thank you, and Commissioner.
Unless you created one.
Just to follow up on Member Miller's question. So right now, Shungnak, or Kodiak, excuse me, has a road that goes all the way to Bornite. And that would take it right to the Ambler Road. It'll be right there going through Bornite, the Arctic project. And so that's not gated. If they're going to be gated on both ends, because that road goes all the way to the Ambler Valley, which is quite a ways past Bornite. So what's going to stop all the residents from Kodiak accessing that road right now, being private? I mean, they're going to have access. There's already a road right there anyway. It goes from Kodiak to Dall Creek to Bornite. And you're going to tie that road in right into the Bornite project.
Yeah, that's a good question. So Ada is currently working on we're setting up an LLC to own the road. We will have multiple partners in that LLC. The details of that corporation and how it's structured and how they will maintain the road and how they will secure the road at both ends will be dealt with in that in that framework. My assumption would be that they'll probably have some sort of a gate at the at the south end of the Bornite end there, so that Kodiak folks can't get on the road. We really don't want personal vehicles and non-commercial travel going up and down that road. The ore trucks are going to weigh about 360,000 pounds, and we don't need people getting on there, driving and stopping and viewing things or breaking down or anything like that. We want those trucks to have the ability to not have to try to traverse around, personal vehicles. So I think they're going to do everything they can to keep the residents of Kodiak off there. And obviously at the Dalton end, it'll be much easier. We're going to have a gated, we'll have a gate and a security shack and all that, so.
Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question's for subsistence. So I realize there's several trappers that could be or are going to be affected by this corridor. And in my opinion, because it's a limited number, because it's a unique activity of subsistence, that they will be directly lose reasonable opportunity. and not being able to trap within the 2 miles as they cross the corridor. And 2 miles on a trap line, depending on your habitat and what you're going after, it could be significant loss of trying to harvest fur. Is that reasonable to think that, or have you guys looked into that?
Thank you for the question through the chair. As you saw from our slides, there's a diversity of resources used by communities in this region, and the area used for subsistence is vast. It also varies annually. Alternative A has been, now that we have confirmation that Alternative A has been the route chosen, it's the board that would need to consider the impacts to reasonable opportunity per the subsistence statute.
And I guess just a point of clarification, if we were to adopt this proposal, is this corridor going to be closed even if the road is never built, or is it contingent on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is contingent on that. This could be adopted, but there's no road now, so you don't have an anchor point for your regulation to exist. This will go into effect once road construction begins.
Member Loring, then Member Brett.
Thank you. Ryan, in one of the RCs, it talks about that the commissioners considering an appeal to the route, and you know how much time that takes for the commissioner to make that decision on whether to continue or not continue?
To the chair, Member Loring, I would direct you to Commissioner Vincent Lang for that question.
I'm not sure, what are you talking about, the Commissioner of DNR, or?
Yeah, the RC talks about condition for DNR.
Yeah. DNR. Yeah.
You know how that process works, what kind of time frame we're dealing with? Because right now, I guess everything's put on hold until he makes that decision.
My understanding is that now that the road a final route has been selected, that decision's fundamentally been made. But I will check and get back to you, but I can't get back to you until tomorrow when we have our meeting.
Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you. So I was reading that RC too, and it said that at this time, the DNR is only going to start surveying and figuring out the exact route for that road. Is there any estimated time when the road would be finished?
There are a lot of factors that are going into when we get to start the project. Like I said before, we have a corporation that's going to own the road, and we have to get through that first with our partners. That's a major hurdle, and then we will also have a funding hurdle as well. And so the timeline, I've heard anywhere from 6 months to 2 years for a financial decision out of Ada and Ambler Metals. So I can't tell you right now. I know I'm shooting for, I'm hoping sometime in 28 to get started. I'm expecting about 2.5 years worth of construction, but that's all subject to those things going much quicker than they could. So it's still up in the air, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. For instance, Fish and Game needs to go out now and do all the stream crossing surveys and do all the Title 16 permitting. So this is a ways away yet, but at least this gives some assurance to the people that are living in the area that it's not going to open up a lot more land to hunting and trapping just because of potential increased access.
Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what I kind of anticipated. And, this is a regulation. It'd be in effect for 3 years, and somebody could bring it back up and change it or do something else to it. But again, this is so far out into the future that the same concerns the commissioner has about moving the project forward with this assurance. It's not really an assurance, it's just a regulation that is mute because there is no road and there's nothing going on. And, the same arguments when the road gets near finished, could be brought to that future board and have that discussion and maybe have a lot more information and data on, on subsistence uses in that area or potentially, And I think it's very premature is what I'm thinking right now.
Member Batesville.
Yeah, I got a question, maybe of subsistence. Looking at the per capita harvest of wild resources and stuff, was there any analysis done to not only look at the effects of this proposed closure, but the effects during the time of construction and how that's going to possibly affect that per capita harvest in those communities?
Through the chair. In short, no. The data provided on the per capita slide comes from our most recent subsistence community surveys. They don't happen annually, and so we pieced them together based on the communities that have proximity to the proposed corridor. Per capita harvest varies, as I said, for a variety of reasons annually. One of the reasons being resource availability, another being harvest and use patterns, which is very community and culturally bound. And our ability to project into the future what this proposal, if adopted, were to impact that rate of harvest is not something that we're able to do at this time. We just are able to show what harvest levels are and how they vary through time.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Vice Chair Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Question to the Commissioner. I know you answered this in some form already, but is there, for the special meeting for Proposal 4, if we don't take action at this meeting right now, what how would that impact this road project?
Yeah, so the reason we brought this to a special meeting is that by the time the MOU was signed, the proposal deadline was done. So we didn't have time to put a proposal, and we could have brought an ACR, but an ACR wouldn't come up until the next work session, which would delay that discussion for later. So we decided to bring it to a special board meeting so that we can continue the planning process. As I said, there's a meeting tomorrow. There'll be a couple more meetings in the next few months. We wanted to keep those on track. And we made a commitment to both Nana and Doyon that we would try to keep that timing on track.
Member Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, can you answer, are you going to be working with the Board of Fish as well?
No one ever brought to our attention the desire to close fishing. If that was brought forward to us, I guess we would consider that too. But the main request that came to us from both Doyon and Nana was hunting and trapping.
Okay, thank you. And then I did pull up my information here from the governor's letter for the entry authorization, and it's listed under the Department of Interior. And it does state on the last page, just for clarification on where I got this information, under number 66, it does state airstrips. The grantee shall operate project airstrips for Ambler Road activities only, except for emergency landings. The general public shall not have use of an airstrip or for recreational or other non-business related purposes.
My understanding that's for airstrips that are being used in support of the Ambler Road, not existing airstrips, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Joe Kemp with ADA. I want to be real clear that all the airstrips along the Ambler mining road will be private. They will be the same as the road, so they will not be for public use, and because, of course, there's an emergency landing. The only one that will be public, which is public now, would be Doll Creek.
Member Loring.
I just got confused. Existing airstrips that are in place now that are being used by the public, if they're inside the buffer zone, they would be, or are you just talking about airstrips that are proposed to be built to support the road and the mine.
Yeah, currently, right now, there is one private airstrip at Sun Camp that I know of. There might be a few little grass strips somewhere or something that I don't know about that's possible. The plan is to construct 2, maybe 3, probably 2 new private airstrips for construction of the road. And then also, we will use them for maintenance and operations purposes as well.
Yes, and those are the airstrips that would be closed. The existing airstrips that are on the route would remain open, but you could land there, but you couldn't hunt and trap if they were in the corridor. You could still access other lands with those airstrips.
Member Muller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for clarifying that. How about when the road is constructed? Will there be additional or potential new runways going in?
Yeah, right now, we have no adequate runways for construction. Now, I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit here. We will have a contractor coming on board, and I will let them dictate where and how many airstrips they want to build for construction. My guess is it's probably going to be the 2 that we're going to want for operations. Coincidentally, the Doll Creek airstrip is a public airstrip owned by the state of Alaska, DOT. It is outside of the corridor, and you would have to, assuming there's some sort of a gate going up to Bornite, you'd have to get through the security gate to get onto the road from there. So there's no public airstrips right now within the corridor.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from board members? Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to maybe build some of the record, you know, there is a huge amount or a lot of testimony, written and verbal, that are opposed to having this corridor. I believe the Constitution, as far as the game side of it versus the mineral side of it, should be looked at a little harder. Understand that we're in a quid pro kind of situation where landowners want some assurance of a corridor or lack of trespassing, you know, which I thought the gated and guarded road would do that. But I also thought that there might be a way that we could satisfy some of this, and that would be we could potentially pass this as written and then sunset it for 3 to 4 years, making a future board readdress the issues that may or may not be there. It's an option.
Discussion from the board on Member Brett's comments. Member Loring.
Thank you to the commissioner. If this was passed and then sunsetted, how would that affect the permitting and the movement forward on the road construction? If it's now and then we just reevaluate it later, do you have any thought on that or insight on that?
I guess I have 2 thoughts on this. One is Department of Law, and I probably want to weigh in here because they're not very supportive of sunset clauses because any board can act on a proposal at any time on it, and sunset clause has been increasingly negatively looked at in a lot of regulatory mechanisms. So if I was a landowner, I guess I'd wonder about a sunset clause. Or does that mean that you're willing to look through it through planning, but then bail on it the first time when the road is built, and then you're going to have no buffer zone? So I haven't really thought that through. I guess kind of like when you own a house, you kind of want to know what your neighbor's zoning laws are, and you kind of want to have some certainty that they're not going to change, you know, as you live in your house. So I'm not sure how I feel about a sunset clause. I know a board in the future can reconsider a proposal any way they want anyway, so I think a sunset clause is probably would raise some degree of angst amongst some of the people that are looking for some certainty moving forward.
anything to add on that, Department of Law?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's, you can include sunset clauses in the regulations. This board has done that in the past. It can result in some increased complexity. It can result in some increased uncertainty. And so those are considerations with whether it would be prudent to include. And so the board should, if the board wanted to consider something like that, it should make a robust record as to its purpose.
But just alternatively, you could, as part of any action you take, say, we're going to revisit this in X amount of time without it sunsetting. It's the same net effect.
Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the board has done this in the past, and in the past, I've never supported a sunset clause, but I believe a gated and guarded road doesn't need a corridor, and we have several examples of that already in the state. And so I think there's good assurance there, but to keep the conversation going, as the commissioner keeps saying, I thought providing this would let that opportunity, continue on. And who knows what a future board or what board members would be on this board in 3 to 4 years with the turnover. But it also, for those people that were against this, and there was many NGOs and many individuals, and the ACs were very unified on this, that they would also have some insurance that, that their voice is being heard and their comments are being heard, and they still want to, address all their issues of having a corridor.
Member Muller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Member Al, for sharing that. I think I'd like to ask the question for future boards. Would somebody be able to propose on future meetings that the corridor were to be removed or changed, since this is a private road?
My understanding, the future board could change the regulation that they adopt here, just like any regulation. You have the ability to revisit it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have a policy for a board-generated proposal, and I think a future board could have a board-generated proposal to remove that said buffer.
Okay, but just for clarification, because it is a private road.
Yeah, you still control hunting and trapping. You couldn't open access to the road. That's beyond your control, but you can control what happens off of the road surface on either side of it.
Okay, thank you. One more question. So, as the current board here, we could also change what this proposal is to be less than the mile.
That's your call.
Thank you.
I'm just telling you what we agreed to as part of the MOU to bring forward.
Yes, thank you.
Vice Chair Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification. I've heard this phrase several times now. If someone can give us some more details on it. What exactly does gated and guarded mean? Does that mean the whole road is gated? And is it guarded just at the entry points, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, that would just be at the entry points. We won't, again, I can't speculate on how the security will look. There might be some sort of security guards that will drive up and down the road potentially, but at this time I can't say. All I can tell you right now is that there will be a gate at the Dalton Highway and possibly one at Bornite.
It'd be a good place for a dog race. A really good place for a dog race. Member Loring.
Thank you. That's a big question, answers we don't know on just how the security is going to work and just who's going to be allowed to enter. Obviously it'd be mining trucks and probably fuel trucks and supply trucks that specifically service the mine. But then if we have spur roads and the villages are going to want to, bring in fuel and groceries and that type of stuff. And just where does that end as far as who's going to have access to that road? If we have a corridor, then we have some, at least in regulation, a closure to hunting. And if we don't have a corridor, then we can have a whole plethora of different uses on that road that, other than an individual private vehicle, that would be able to, stop and shoot a wolf or hunt a caribou, that type of thing too. So it's just that we're so wide open now and just what everything means and what's going to happen and how security is going to work and, what's going to happen with spur roads and how they're going to can they access the main road off the spur road. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, or is this just kind of one of those open-ended questions that just have to ponder?
Maybe I'll try to answer it. So we had a lot of those discussions, and I have no idea what the private developer is going to do in terms of allowing access by people that live along the road for bringing groceries in. But we were adamant as a state, if you're going to have a buffer, it applies to everybody. So people that may have access to that road to bring in groceries or other things won't be able to hunt in the buffer just like anybody else. So it applies equally across that zone. So you're not going to give unfair access to people that live along the road because they're going to potentially get groceries into that hunting or into that 2-mile zone around the road.
Member Loring.
Hey, just quick follow-up. Yeah, I'm just familiar with like roads, ice roads that go into Newixick in the wintertime or Beddells in the wintertime. But the Newixick one goes right through the oil fields. But they do allow the residents in Newixick to drive in and out. And so that's just an example of non-commercial use being allowed by, the oil companies up on the North Slope during that time. And I can just see the same thing happening here unless we have some idea exactly what's going to be allowed and not allowed. So even though we're talking about, so just thinking about a no hunting buffer versus not having a buffer, just some concerns I have. Thank you.
Member Garner.
Yeah, not a specific question. I actually kind of just want to divulge some thoughts. I think the conversation that we're having is a bit speculative. The conversation around sunset clause and ice roads and other accesses. I think we need to focus on the proposal at hand. The board is here to manage the wildlife and manage this proposal. The conversation is pretty speculative. I think and I'm just going to divulge some thoughts. The proposal is setting kind of a precedence that we must restrict hunting and trapping opportunity in order to develop natural resources, and that's not the precedence by the state constitution. A couple of other things, Commissioner, I heard you say that, mostly this corridor being established as a 2-mile wide there are landowners, private landowners, Doyon, Nana, along this roadway. Reference RC 027. Doyon land is approximately 1 mile of the 10 miles, of the 211-mile road. Nana lands is approximately 20 miles. That equates to 60 square miles of a 420-mile closure that's driving this. I also measure that, again, just divulging my thoughts, looking at the subsistence reporting. There are impacts to villages along that corridor, which are villages under those landowners, private landowner corporations that will have negative impacts and not be able to subsist within that corridor. And then also in the environmental impact statement, I see on the subsistence report, there are 8 communities, but the EIS identifies that surrounding 27 to 34 communities may be impacted by this closure. Their subsistence may be impacted. So kind of just trying to focus on those points, the closure. Not in favor of sunsetting, would rather handle it now than kick the can down the road.
Other board members? Member Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps we can ask for enforcement comments on how we would be able to monitor for private access or across the road, and how we're going to have any enforcement out in those areas.
Member Mueller through the chair. I would assume the troopers would have access to the road, so we would either do it by patrol vehicles, we would do it by aircraft or fixed wing or helicopters. We don't have, I've been on the Pogo Road mine quite a few times. We actually don't have very many complaints about public trespass on the Pogo Mo. I can't think of any in the 10 years I've been here. I mean, with a gate, it's a pretty good thing. I guess where we would need to clarify is where that right-of-way for that road goes across federal land and native land. We don't usually enforce stuff on federal land. That's up to the feds. And on native land, unless there's a reason that we need to be on it, we don't go patrol private property. So that'll all have to be worked out. And so whether the right-of-way for this road is 2 miles wide and that is all given to the state of Alaska, then we would be able to enforce that. But if the road is the only thing that is given to the state of Alaska through these private lands and federal lands, this corridor, which will be outside of that road, we're going to have to work out how we're going to enforce that on private and federal lands.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to kind of expand on what Member Garner was speaking to earlier in the subsistence side of this. You know, closing or restricting hunting in Alaska is a really big deal. It's even more so in the rural areas where subsistence is needed to survive and to live. And, you know, it was just stated we have 7 or 8 impacted direct villages right near the road and up to many more. There could be things going on that we don't even know about. And I want to hear from these people. I know that it may seem like this road is small or the footprint is small, but there could be something going on in there that someone needs to, that only happens in that area. What that could be, I don't know yet, but if, you know, we need to hear at least from the tribal councils or the municipalities of these at least 8 villages or more, just to make sure we're not stopping something that's vital to someone's functioning and surviving.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. I wanted to follow up on the comments from Member Hoffman and Member Garner. I want to just make the distinction between the 2 data sets that I spoke to. Our spatial data shown here is a culmination of all spatial data gathered statewide, regardless of community. Anyone who reported use in this area, their use area was aggregated here in this green polygon. So that would address the concern Member Gardner brought up about the many more communities that are addressed through the EIS. The 8 communities that you reference are referring to our harvest data, the table. And just for sake of being able to display it on a single slide, we chose to limit the harvest numbers, harvest data that we've gathered to the 8 communities with close proximity to the road. We do have the harvest data for all other communities that may have also reported use near this road, but we chose not to show them here. So those 2 data sets are different.
Member Mueller and then Member Garner.
Great, thank you. Can I just clarify then on page, slide number 24 on your table? It does show for Ambler that you were able to capture the year 2024, but do you have past information from the timeframe of 2011 or 2012 from Ambler?
Through the chair, my understanding is that that was I believe that was our first comprehensive subsistence survey conducted in Ambler. The Park Service did contract or work with us to gather that data or fund that data collection effort in anticipation of some of these conversations coming up. I'd have to follow up with you later to provide any smaller data sets that we had in Ambler, but I believe that was the first that asked about every single wild resource that could possibly be harvested or used in the region.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just for clarification then, so you do have the data referencing slides 23 and 24, which show 8 communities and their subsistence harvest. If all of the data of subsistence impact to that area was put into a graph, it would show 27 to 34 according to the EIS. Is that what you're summarizing?
A few caveats, the chair, if I may. The Division of Subsistence is unable to survey every community every year, right? And some communities in Alaska have never been surveyed. So our data set is, there's some holes. So off the top of my head, I can't speak to whether or not those 20-plus communities have been surveyed in a comprehensive way by the division. Many of them have, and some of them have multiple times. What that data shows, if we were to put all of those communities on a graph like this, you would see high subsistence use. A variety of wild foods being harvested, shared, utilized, what have you. The reason we selected these and to show here is because they have the closest proximity to the corridor, and we know that their use area is also near the corridor. But that distinction that I made previously is important, that the green polygon I showed is not specific to any one community or any 8 communities. It actually isn't even necessarily specific to this region. Any Alaskan that we've surveyed somewhere in the state, even we had, if you read the key on the map that I present, I believe there's data from Cordova being shown. That means that we've conducted a survey in Cordova, and someone from Cordova indicated that they traveled to that area and their use area does overlay within the parameters that we had chosen to display on that map.
Oh, Dr. Rita.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to follow up on a couple of things. So for example, a lot of this data, because we do have such a comprehensive data set, just that is similar to the Division of Wildlife Conservation's data set as far as their comprehensive aspect that Director Scott spoke to. We also took that 20,000-foot view of how to present the data to the board. And that information is available on our community subsistence information system on our database online. So that is information that we could get to in more detail, provided the time to do that and having the specificity of what the board would need. Additionally, for example, with the question with regard to Ambler, in looking at that database that we have online, we have subsistence harvest surveys going from 1997 all the way through 2024. That doesn't mean every year, but that is the range I very quickly looked up online. So that gives you an idea of the type of information that we have available to us and to the board and to the public as far as that goes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other board members? Questions, thoughts? Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was going through the MOU because I had a few things in there that we're progressing now, and I said, what's the purpose of this subsistence committee, and what authority would they have or may not have?
We developed a subsistence advisory committee in, I think it was 2021. My memory's failing me. It's been with the state a long time, sorry. They are there to advise us on progressing the design, whether or not we need to have certain kind of, where they think the caribou might be going. I know there's a lot of crossover with them with Fish and Game as well. But their role is to help and advise us on, I think how to say this. I think they're just there for advisory and making sure that we're not doing things that are going to impact the communities along the route.
Yeah, maybe I could just add a little bit. So that Subsistence Advisory Committee, they attend meetings, they provide advice on when the Ambler mining project proponents or ADA has questions, they give advice. How is that going to impact it? In the Cotspeed Road, for instance, by Red Dog Mine, they have a subsistence advisory board that committee advises them on how to have passage going up and down the road. You might want to stop now because we got caribou moving down the road, and really the mine kind of listens to that, Red Dog mine listens, and they may pause operations for a little while in terms of moving ore down to the port site. So they're advisors in how to lessen the impact to subsistence uses in those areas in all phases of the operation of the road and the design of the road, as well as the construction projects.
Just a follow-up on that, Commissioner, would there be any state funding for this subsistence committee?
That's currently funded by the mining project in Ada.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Hoffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So over the course of this meeting and the public comments and the written comments regarding Proposal 4, the public had many questions and concerns, and those varied greatly. And just went over all my notes, and yeah, lots of people had lots of different questions and ideas and so forth, but I think every single one of them at the end of that stated something to the effect of, about having this needing more time for the public to weigh in. And my time on the board, it's rare that we have a consensus like that, where virtually every single person is saying we need more time, more public input, public process, and stuff like, for this to take place at a regular scheduled board meeting, so that we cover everything. Everyone is aware of it, and there's no one that can get missed, or at least they. So I just wanted to point that out. That was conveyed at this meeting.
Thanks for that. Any other board members' thoughts on this? Intent on this? I guess Member Loring.
I don't want to open up a kind of a new subject, just a real quick question to Ada. What's the life expectancy of the mine? How long are they expecting to have this going?
Yeah, the current estimates for the Arctic mine is 13 years. Ambler Metals is not willing to speculate beyond that. There are plenty of other mine sites up there. How long those will go, I couldn't say. I would expect it'll be more than 13 years, but how long, I don't know. But right now, if their official answer is 13 years.
And so what happens to this private road when everything's played out, whether 13 years or 20 years? Does it go back to public state ownership, or what's the forecast for the road?
I do know that we will have a plan to remove the road at the end of the life of all the mining out in the district.
Okay, so the road will be removed, is that what the plan is?
That is the current plan.
There's a lot that has to occur down that road. I think there's a possibility that portions of that road, for instance, through the gates of the national park, that road may be required to be removed as part of the condition of the permitting from the Congress authorized the road through there just to access the mining district. But it's hard, I think there was a vision of the Hall Road being removed at one time too, and then eventually that became a road. So I think how that evolves over time after the mining road is done is going to be a whole nother question, so.
Other board members, we probably should really like all the questions, but we probably should refocus on the proposal in front of us right here. And I guess, Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think just moving along, I think my intent is not to support this. I think Member Gardner made a very clear and concise statement revolving around the issue at hand with the corridor. And Member Hoffman pointed out the same thing. I mean, we have all ACs that commented, were opposed to it or took no action because there wasn't enough information provided to them at their meetings. The comments we received from all the NGOs in the state were opposed to this, and also referenced that there's a lot of questions that need to be asked and need to be answered. and we've seen the same thing through individual comments, that this, people are uncomfortable about supporting this as it is with the lack of information that people have been provided so far.
Other board members, you know, the Board of Game got created so the legislature wouldn't get bogged down with these issues, right? I believe definitely that this should be handled by the Board of Game. I don't think that this should be moved to the legislature. There's been a lot of great questions here, and I really appreciate the discussion. But, you know, the fact that some of these communities haven't, you know, have never been surveyed, there's so many little nuances that we could be missing in this. I really think it's an important topic, but I'm going to kind of side with Vice Chair Hoffman here. We need more public participation. We need more input. We need more information about it. I don't know, and I really appreciate the special meeting because we've formulated a lot of really good questions that we can ask the public, and then we can get back from the public their take on these things. We've had a really good, healthy, robust conversation on it. I think maybe we should take this up in Kotzebue, potentially. We'll have a, you know, in a regular meeting, but that's just a couple of my thoughts. Member Garner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, kind of just another thought, you know, that seems to be driving this corridor is the Doyon, Nana, Tanana Chiefs, the trespass issue. You know, we're here to manage the wildlife and the resource within this board. I think this is kind of more of a project issue, you know, something, it is a private road, gated and guarded, maybe a patrol along that corridor helps those landowners feel a little more comfortable with the trespass issue that they're trying to solve. I don't think creating a 2-mile corridor which removes subsistence from their villages within their land is the answer. I would put it back to within the contract, Doyon, Nana, Tanana Chiefs worked with the Ada state, the contractor, maybe gated, guarded, and patrolled could be a solution.
Member Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to add to that I think we've had a very robust conversation, and I would think that the corporations that, you know, are in favor of having a buffer zone, you know, seriously look at, you know, still cooperating and want to move forward with building a road that, you know, the board has, you know, discussed in a great way that, you know, we're not opposed to potentially having a buffer zone. It's just way too early to make that decision, and you know, we're sympathetic to, you know, landowners and to the local community people out there. So I would encourage them that they, you know, continue on and not just, you know, take your shovel and pail and leave the sandbox.
Commissioner.
So I heard a couple of discussions here that's kind of intriguing. So one is tabling this to the Kotzebue discussion, and I'm just trying to figure out, if you tabled it, what would you want for additional information coming forward to the Kotzebue meeting from the department or from Ada, so that we were prepared to do that? Because right now there is no proposal at that Kotzebue meeting, so you either have to develop an ACR or table this to that meeting if you want to continue the discussion. So just some discussion to inform the department and Ada and the different groups what additional information you'd be looking for if you do that, if you choose that route.
I guess just off the top of my head, I'd like to see a lot more ACs meet and a lot more ACs talk about this, and then have a lot more of those ACs engaged and seeing what they say. That'd just be one thing off the top of my head.
Well, if you table it, then that would be on their AC agendas.
Other board members, Member Batchel.
Yeah, and also I believe that hearing more from the uses from those communities alongside that corridor, more recent information, given the changes of wildlife use and populations and wildlife and stuff, and what their feeling is and their concerns are with that closure along that corridor. which might come through the AC process.
So looking up and down the line, what's everybody thinking here? Are we gonna, you want to vote on this thing? Do we want to potentially table it and take it up in Kotzebue? What's everybody kind of thinking? What are they scratching their head about? Anybody? Member Garner.
I think the state owns 360 square miles of what that closure would be. 60 square miles, under the 2 mile corridor is where I'm getting those numbers. And I could not support the proposal, given the state constitution and set a precedence that we would have to restrict the wildlife in that area for natural resource development. I'm for natural resource development. We haven't had the restrictions previously through other Pogo, Green Creek, Red Dog. Red Dog has private land ownership. They worked it out. I would be a vote of no on the proposal and have them work it out.
Other board members, Member Loring.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, one reason that the proposal number 4 kind of has a positive look in my eyes is that we just don't know how the gated, guarded situation is going to work and who's going to be there and who's not going to be there and who can get in. If we have a no hunting, no trapping corridor in place, then at least DPS can deal with something as far as a violation that gets by the security. And I just think there's going to be a lot of security violations that were not intended or talked about this meeting, but so that, to me, that's one positive aspect of the corridor.
Member Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the proposal as written, I do also have concerns of just how it's written, that close a 2 mile wide corridor along the Ambler Road as follows. So it doesn't necessarily specify the time frame of when that closure would be. So we do need even clarification on that based on timelines. So, it might be implemented 3 years down the road, right? But it would also have to be incorporated into the proposal. So amended, or if we do push it down the road, we do need more information.
Other board members, what's everybody kind of thinking? Member Gardner says he's kind of decided on this. And I guess just to reiterate my thoughts, I think I'd like to hear a lot more weigh in from the public on this. This is kind of a unique time that we had this meeting. It's in the middle of summer. It's outside of the normal, scope when these, folks get together and talk about these complicated issues. I think Kotzebue might be an appropriate venue, but other board members? If not, Member Loring.
I think our next move forward is either decide are we going to table it and defer it to Kotzebue, or are we going to vote it up and down? And so I can get some discussion on just what our next move is. I've got those two options right now.
Anybody have a preference, whether to table it or Vice Chair Hoffman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's, my statements already point to the fact that I'm moving to table this, and I would support that, tabling it to the Kotzebue meeting. Mr. Chairman, I move to table this proposal number 4 to the Kotzebue meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And I think at this point in time, sure, Member Gardner, if you want to make a comment.
Yeah, I don't know if you have the amendment on the table, if I can make the comment, I think we could vote on it now, and then maybe a proposal with different arrangements may be able to come forward, but being more definitive gives the ability for the project to move forward.
Thanks for that. I think it would be, we have a motion to table this till the Kotzebue meeting. It's been seconded. We have some conflicting probably views on this, so I'm not going to ask for unanimous consent. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
On the motion to table Proposal 4 to the Kotzebue meeting. Garner.
No.
Bechtel.
Yes.
Mueller.
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Barrett.
No.
Loring.
Yes.
Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 2 against, Mr. Chair.
So we'll table Proposal 4 to the Kotzebue meeting. We have a little bit of miscellaneous business here, but let's take a 10-minute break and come back. Hey, welcome back. We're back on the record here. We're in miscellaneous business, and we're going to have a Mulchatna Caribou Herd Intensive Management update. So whenever you're ready. Oh, Director Scott.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to introduce the speakers today. Here in the room, we have Chris Brockman. He'll be providing portions of the update. And we also have Management Coordinator Todd Rinaldi from Region 4 online. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Whenever you're ready, Chris.
Actually, I think Todd's going to do the update, and I'm just here to answer questions if any come up.
Sounds good. All right, take it away, Todd.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Fletcher, members of the board, colleagues, invited guests, and members of the public. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great. Okay, so my name's Todd Rinaldi. I'm the Regional Wildlife Management Coordinator for the Central Southwest region. This morning, I'll be providing an update on the Mulchatna Caribou herd and recent spring intensive management activities. This presentation can be found on RC3, tab 1.5, and it's entitled Mulchatna IM Update 2026. So the current IM operational plan was reevaluated before the board in 2022 and again in 2025. It is currently approved through 2028. Modifications to the plan in 2022 and 2025 included addition of state lands in Game Management Unit 18, removing a limited 10,000 square mile limitation to the predator control area, allowing for multiple predation control areas, adding black bears and brown bears to the plan, and also authorized the department staff to employ aerial, same-day airborne, or ground-based lethal removal primarily associated with the West Mulchatna calving grounds, one of two major calving areas of the Mulchatna. The purpose of the plan is to increase the Mulchatna caribou herd to aid in achieving intensive management objectives. But we also recognize that predator control under this IM plan, as with all state predation control programs in Alaska, is not about extermination. It's about an immediate and short-term, carefully targeted management tool used in specific areas where predation is limiting the recovery of prey species, such as the Mulchatna caribou herd. Without intervention, they may remain at low levels or further dwindle. Communities that rely on these caribou have no harvest opportunities, and not now, and may not have additional opportunities in the future if action is not taken. The most recent public same-day airborne wolf removal is pictured here. It's called the Greater Mulchatna Wolf Control Area. It consists of portions of 9B, 17B and C, Unit 18, and portions of 19B. The Kima control area, I'm going to use my mouse. I think you guys might be able to see it. I don't think board members will see it, but the Kima control area is this core area centered around the villages of Kodiak, Nustoyahawk, and Ekwak. That area, that's the embedded area. Let's see, so this Kima area actually opened up 2 months later. So the Greater Mulchatna area historically opened up on December 1st, but the Kima area, that small embedded area, opened up on February 1st, and that was to give local folks and residents an opportunity to take wolves through hunting and trapping from the ground. Due to low wolf take, resulting from low participation in same-day airborne activities in the east, this is most often constrained by weather and tracking conditions. We were not meeting the wolf reduction objectives. So the SDA program was suspended as of December 2025. This past year, there was no department-led removal during the spring control activities, and this was due to the outcome of a recent lawsuit last spring. And so I'm going to point out here for those in the audience and those that can see my mouse, please note the size, location, and area that I'm circling right now, because this is that area. And I'm going to go back here again because there seems to be some confusion in the public. This area is not the predation control area. We were actively removing predators on the western calving grounds. That area is way over here. It is a very small area. Over here is Lake Clark National Park. This is Bristol Bay down here. And Kodiak National Wildlife Refuge 17 and 18 is here. So this is the area that we've been focusing on. This is the primary removal area. In bright red, it's centered around caribou calving concentrations the last couple of years. It's estimated at only about 530 square miles. And this year was very similar to previous years. Obviously, that's why we're using the 2025 map. Spring activities have just completed, as well as a summer photo census. So some analyses have yet to be completed. But this is the area that we're working in. This is the area where animals are being removed. They're not being removed from 10,000 square miles. They're not being moved from 40,000 square miles. This spring, Western Mulchatna caribou herd initiated their eastward migration in late April, an earlier movement than the previous few years, and arrived on the border of state lands around April 25th. Bear removal efforts concurrent with neonatal calf captures and monitoring took place from May to June 5th. Calf monitoring will continue through the year and some of those animals may remain on the air as adults when recruited into the population. During the same spring period, neonate caribou were also being captured and monitored for health and survival in the east near Lake Clark National Park. That's the eastern Mulchatna, providing a comparative baseline and tremendous insight as one component in a larger scale parturition, nutrition, and survival research program that has been underway for several years. This spring, the department removed 68 bears, 54 adults, 14 cubs less than 2 years old, and 4 2-year-olds, which are actually included in that 54 number. That totals 68 brown bear removed from the predation control area. This is the timeline. There's 29 females, 38 males, and 1 of unknown sex due to steep terrain preventing recovery. I'd like to take a moment to clarify on the record that the Department of Fish and Game cannot legally and would not jeopardize long-term sustainability of bear and wolf populations. Predator populations are managed for sustained yields. Populations are monitored, as in the CMR work that we did last year, and adjustments would be made if there is any indication of risk to the long-term sustainability of any of these populations. Currently, the bear mortality rate from the limited control area, combined with hunting across the historic range of the Mulchatna, is estimated at a 7% removal rate or harvest rate. I'm going to say removal rate because it includes bears that were removed and not harvested. This is consistent with the sustained yield of brown bears across much of Alaska and across British Columbia. This spring in the Western Mulchatna area, calving area, 80 calves were collared, 34 females and 46 males, between May 10th and May 26th. Of the 80 calves collared, 1 was centered due to collar failure, and 18 died. That represents 77% survival and only 23% mortality due to various causes. In the first mortality was detected on May 13th. And the last mortality was detected, it was detected before May 25th. So of the 80 calves collared in the west, the preliminary proximate cause of death was 6.3% or 5 by bear, 2.5% or 2 by wolf or canid, 3.8% or 3 by an unknown predator or unknown predators, 1.3 or 1 to an eagle, and 8.8% or 7 by non-predation causes. The predator-specific data is preliminary and it will be adjusted as our DNA analysis are completed. Survival during the predator removal period in 2024 and 2025 was nearly the same at 76%. And 78%, respectively, being slightly higher in 2025. Removals in 23 and 2024 may have reduced the predation pressure to a point where higher calf survival could be maintained, even with the minimal additional removal last spring over the course of just a few days before we were stopped in our activities. Bear-caused mortalities did increase significantly in 2025. However, it went from 2% to, it went from 1 to 7, so 2 to 9%. In the eastern Mulchatna calving grounds, where no control activities have been taking place, 105 calves were collared. One disappeared after being collared almost immediately. So that animal was censored from the sample population, leaving 104 study animals. Of those 104, 57 died, leaving 45% survival and 55% mortality due to various causes. The first mortality was detected around May 13th. The preliminary proximate cause of death in the east was 56% or 32 by brown bear, 13% or 13 by wolf or canid, and 9% or 5 by unknown predator, and 12% or 7 by non-predation causes. And those include 2 abandonments and 5 drownings. The predator-specific data is preliminary, much like the West, and will be adjusted as DNA analyses are completed. I'm going to point out that since May, we have documented 4 more predations by brown bear in the east, bringing the total to 36 calves killed by brown bears. So that raises it from 55% mortality to 58% mortality. So we're looking at survival rates of 77 in the west, where predation control is occurring, and a survival rate of 45% in the east, where no predation is occurring. While simpler survival rate is higher during the primary window, when calculated to 14 days from capture, in 2026, the West was comparable to 2025 at 77%, almost 78%, but slightly lower than the recent high in 2024 of 81%. The East experienced significant decline in survival from 2024, from 65% to 45% this year. Of course, with that calculation, I think it's 42% now in June. Survival to 150, let's see. So this is information to last year, to 152 days in 2025. It's been calculated for 2025. We will gather this information come fall of 2026 in a couple of months, and we'll have this information to provide for you. So this information is through last year. So after the preliminary calving period, neonates continued to be monitored in both calving grounds. Survival from 14 days to 152 days, or approximately 5 months of age, was higher in 2025 at 71% than 2024, which was 65%, and higher than the long-term average, which was only 54%. Part of our annual S&I work is to assess fall population demography through sex age composition surveys, providing percent of bulls, cows, and calves within management segments. We strive to understand the sex and age composition because it helps us inform management decisions for managing towards sustained yield. And one of our best markers, calf to cow ratios for the success of the program, at least in the short term, is the increase in the calf to cow ratio. It's one of our primary goals in the predation control program. October provides an ideal time to conduct these surveys. There's limited sexual segregation after hunting season and before the rut, and age classes are a little more uniformly mixed during the rut, so it overlaps that period. Just as a reminder, the Mulchatna IM objectives include a bull to cow objective of 35 to 100, a calf to cow ratio of 35 to 100. Prior to implementation, the department predation control effort, the 10-year average calf to cow ratios were 31 calves per 100 cows in the east, and the west had 26 per 100 cows in the west. Over the 3 years of department removal efforts, we continue to document the highest calf to cow ratios in more than 10 years, which seemingly demonstrates a positive response of the Western Mulchatna caribou herd to the predation control treatment and is achieving the goal of increasing early calf survival. Let's see. So obviously, as I just pointed out, this is where we're at as of last fall. We'll get additional information this fall. Let's see. The calf to cow has exceeded the intensive management objectives for the 5th year in a row. It's averaging at 52 to 100. In addition to increased numbers of calves surviving to 5 months of age, the department is also documenting significant population growth. The summer population assessment was conducted on July 7th, 2025. We have not spoken to you since then. And then again this year on July 6th, 2026. Annually, department staff monitor the entire Mulchatna caribou for post-calving aggregations. The east aggregates very strongly in the middle section of the Mulchatna River in Unit 17B, and we usually have to bring in the giant photo plane to snap some of those photos. The West Mulchatna loosely aggregates on persistent snowpack in the northern portion of the Tikchik Mountains in Units 18, 17A and B, and 19B. And those aggregations, they're smaller groups. We're usually able to shoot those with other digital cameras, not the big photo plane. So as you guys know, the pilots and the staff locate collared caribou. They photograph each group. These groups are then counted with the known number of radio collars in each group, and that helps us develop the modeled estimate, which is called the Rivet method or the Rivet estimate. The caribou population estimate has been getting better and better with stronger aggregations as we use radio collars to increase detections, and precision and accuracy has been increasing I guess it's on the next page. So in July 2025, the Mulchatna read an estimated 6,444 caribou, which is roughly more than half the lower population estimate of 30,000 caribou, which was established by the board in 2009. The 2026 photocensus was completed on July 6th, documenting 17,514. So that actually puts us even closer, even higher up here. And that breaks down with an increase of over 1,000 animals and represents another year of strong productivity and survival. The East went to 8684 in 2025, but then did decline to 7716 this year. So that's a decline of just about 900 animals or 1,000. In the West, we went from 7592 in 2025 to 9200 plus in 2026. So the 2025 survey, resulting in 16,444 caribou, was the highest it had been since 2017. Of course, the 26 is even higher. Let's see, the 2026 survey increased approximately 1,000 animals, and the growth appears to be driven by the productivity in the West, as it increased by over 1,400 animals, while the East declined, as I mentioned before, by about 900 to 1,000 animals. So this reflects a growth in the minimum count, different than the population estimate, of 115% in the minimum count for the West Mulchatna between 2022 and 2026, while the East Mulchatna experienced slower growth at 12% increase during the same time period. Overall, the minimum count has increased by 62% on average, but in the Rivet population estimate has increased by 34%. Predator removal efforts began in the West Mulchatna in 2023, and subsequent surveys have documented strong growth. When viewed over the removal years of 2023 to 2026, West Mulchatna Rivet estimate increased 58% by 3,400 animals, and minimum count rose 81% by 4,000 animals. The Rivet estimate for the East and the West Mulchatna combined has increased 40% between 2023 and 2026. This sustained growth following the initiation of department predator removal provides evidence that management actions are actually helping the Mulchatna. All right. Population was showing a slight decrease in trend, kind of right through here, through the 2016 through about 2022, and maybe even into 2023 when we first started our control activities. And those 2 years' estimates were approximately 13.5. So between 2022, pre-department removal, and 2026, East Mulchatna and the West Mulchatna combined increased 44.6% by 5,400 animals, with the West Mulchatna Revet increasing almost 58%. In contrast, the East Revet estimate only grew about 24% during that time frame, for less than half of what we're documenting in the West. So one thing, I don't think we had a chance to talk about this last year. It is in our memos that are published online. But we had to correct some population estimates. Basically, the Central Mulchatna herd has not had enough collars in it to actually do a Revet estimate. They don't intermix with the West ever, so they are now being analyzed as part of the East, and that just adjusts some of our previous numbers. It doesn't do anything for rates of increases or anything, because everything's been adjusted relatively. And so I don't have the 26 year on here because this presentation was submitted beforehand, and obviously it does go to 2025. But you can see that there's just very slight adjustments between what was previously reported and the final. It actually brings the numbers down a little bit initially. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. We won't be reporting, we'll be reporting the East and the West, and we'll be reporting satellite groups in Unit 18, but we won't be reporting any kind of corrected central population estimate in the future. And this is really an artifact of how to manage these herds best. So, since the adoption of the current population objectives of 30,000, 80,000 caribou in 2008, the Mulchatna caribou has averaged about 18,000 animals. There are a couple of caveats. The surveys in 2014 and 2015 had several missing collars during the surveys, which inflated estimates. There were also a lot of groups with just single collars, and so that really blows up the estimate. Surveys in 2017 and 18 did not have adequate conditions to derive a population estimate. So in those years, minimum counts were reported as the population size. All other years represented our population estimates using the Revet estimate. Due to the high number of radio collars present in the herd, we have increased the statistical confidence in the estimate of the Mulchatna herd, and it's very evident when you look at the error bars and see how tight they're getting. That just really speaks to the refinements and how accurate and precise we're getting. And the 2025 survey resulted in 1644, which I mentioned earlier. And it's worth noting that there is probably about 1,500 animals. I don't know what this year's estimate is in Unit 18, that there may be closer to 1,000 animals this year that are not associated with the Mulchatna herd. Okay. So, wolf removal, as I mentioned, is no longer being utilized due to the results of a lawsuit. We closed public SEA, as I mentioned, because it wasn't being effective. But because of the lawsuit, we lost our ability to remove wolves under the Mulchatna Intensive Management Plan. And so we're going to be submitting an ACR in the future to request that authority. The primary period, as I mentioned before, was May through June 5th. It'll be that way again next year. Currently, only brown and black bears, like I mentioned, there's no regulation for wolves, so we'll have to move an ACR forward to get that authority. The goal is to always collar more than 50 neonates in both areas and monitor them through at least the first 5 months of life, if not through the first year. And then we're going to, any of the animals that are dispatched, we will continue to remove the hides, skulls, and meats to be salvaged to the extent possible. I guess I'd like to point out, one thing is we currently don't have a Dillingham area wildlife biologist or an assistant area wildlife biologist. As you know, John Lancetal tragically passed away last August, and we have been unable to fill this position. So I want to just publicly thank all the staff from around the division and within the region that has stepped up to continue to carry out a lot of this field work and stuff on the ground. We have updated the frequently asked questions page in this icon here. If you guys wanted to scan it, that'll take you to the most recent frequently asked questions page on the We'll Chat in a document. There's also links there to review any of the other information that we have. So I mentioned staffing. We're going to continue our research efforts led by Dr. Kristen Denreiter, focusing on the nutritional condition, reproduction, and disease of caribou, of the Mulchatna caribou. That includes the calf mortality study in both the East and the West. We will continue known age captures for S&I purposes and for research purposes, and we will continue to complete the annual population and composition surveys. We also have plans and callers to complete a potential bear study in this area. We're currently working through how to implement that, given the constraints of control and the information that we need to gather, including bear information from adjacent areas. So with that, I leave it up for any questions and discussions. Thank you for your time.
Todd, thanks so much for that overview. Commissioner.
Yeah, I just want to give some thanks to the Wildlife Division for their efforts on Mulchatna caribou. It's a highly controversial subject, but one that we have a law, we're implementing it, and we're committed to implementing it. And the people that are doing that work in the field are to be commended for their efforts to do this in the face of some of the public criticism that we're getting from them. So, Director Scott, thank you for your leadership on this, and thank you, staff, for your involvement in this and moving it forward. I think we are making a difference. We remain committed to the intensive management law, and where it's making a difference in improving populations and food sources for rural residents, especially in our state, and all Alaskans that participate in those hunts, we're going to continue to implement it. And I also want to thank the Department of Law for their support in keeping us in the field. There's a lot of misconception out there that the intensive management law is found unconstitutional. That's not true. It was an APA violation. We've gone back and corrected those records, and we now have the permission of the court to continue this program. So thank you, staff, from the bottom of my heart for your efforts out in the field. I appreciate how difficult that work is, but appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks for that, and thanks for that presentation, Todd. Questions from board members? If not, thank you very much for that presentation and getting caught up on that important work.
Thank you.
And now, get back to dip netting down there. I hear the sockeye are starting to hit the Kenai River, so good luck.
They are at the mouth, but I'm not dip netting, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Any board members have any other miscellaneous business? Anybody want to make any statements or anything like that? Looking up and down the line, I don't see any. I want to kind of say a couple things here. During the course of all the public testimony, I heard a lot of public testimony about the distrust and that the public had in the board and the department for the timing of this meeting, and man, it really hurts to hear that. I had a guy ask me, "Hey Jake, why do you sit out in the audience at the beginning of every meeting?" And I said, it's pretty simple. I sit out in that audience and I look up here because those seats out in the audience are the most important seats in the house. I really, truly believe that. And I really try hard to make sure that every single person in the public is heard and feels like they're listened to. And I'm a positive guy. I only get frustrated when I'm guiding archery sheep hunters. That's the only time I ever get frustrated. And I try to focus on the good stuff. So what I'm going to focus on here is that middle of summer, special meeting, everybody's super busy, and I know the room's kind of cleared out now, but how much public participation we had. We got a guy, we got Herb, who came up on his own dime to, testify for the AC. That's how important it is. And the public participation is the absolute thing that makes this work. And if we can keep engaging the public and getting more of that public participation, it'd be a great thing. With that being said, this meeting's adjourned.